when we set up the first clinic, it skyrocketed really. It went really fast. And what I found was we were pulling.
I have seen a lot of physios who undervalue themselves. Mostly physios who open their private clinics, they have some barrier. Everyone
And
wants.
I think that there's three aspects to being a great physio. And that's a bit of a building block then to go from there. So once they start hitting KPIs, it's like, right, let's have
Recruitment and retention. So you are completely cash based.
Yes.
What do you want to say to those people who would think, Joe, it's easy for you? Hi, everyone. Before we proceed into the actual podcast, I would like to share some analytics with you. Approximately 70% of those people who watch this podcast regularly aren't subscribed yet. I have a request for you. Please subscribe to this channel. It's one click away for you. However, for this channel, it will be the biggest support because I can bring credible guests which will help you in your learning journey. I'm here to revolutionize physiotherapy. And this is a small request for being part of this revolution. Please subscribe to this channel because I need your support. Thank you so much. Have you ever thought to yourself, could I build something of my own? Could I have my own clinic one day? Or if you're somebody who's looking for a job, have you ever thought, what is it that the recruiters actually think about when they are recruiting physios for their clinics, for their organizations? Because that's exactly what we are going to unpack in this podcast with our guest today. He started his career as a sports physiotherapist, building his career, doing something that is a dream for most physios out there. However, he soon realized that building someone else's vision is only going to take him so far. That's when he decided to move from certainty into a clinic, from employed to a business owner. Some conversations teach you a lot, and this is one of them. He's thinking several steps ahead of what it actually takes to have a business owner's mindset. And not to undermine the communication skills. I really admire the way he communicates. But what did he do to get to the stage that he's communicating so well? Things don't happen by accident. You have to plan them, you have to work on them. That's how you get where you get. So today's podcast is a different one. You are going to get several mini masterclasses. Whether you want to have your own clinic, whether you want to build your own communication skill, or whether you're looking for your first job or your employed role. I'm thrilled to announce the physio who is joining us, who started from one treatment room and now he's grown into multiple clinics with a growing team functioning completely on cash-based model. Joe Sharp, owner and founder of Sharp Physiotherapy Clinics. Hi Joe, welcome to Priya Physio Podcast. Thanks a lot for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Okay, Joe, I was quite interested when I saw your profile first time on Instagram. Really, I was truly impressed with the way you speak. And then I was like, oh my God, who's this physio? So I went and looked at your Instagram profile and I read a word there, which was that you are an owner of a cash-based clinic model, cash flow-based. What is that? I'm quite intrigued to know a little bit more about what that is.
Yeah, so what that means is we are 100% cash pay. So we don't work with any insurance companies. You won't find us registered with Bupa. We don't work with NHS contracts. We don't take medical legal contracts. It's 100% cash pay. So patients paying out of pocket for our physiotherapy services. And we operate in 3 different geographical territories. So we've got a clinic in Lincolnshire, one in Nottinghamshire, and the other in South Yorkshire.
Wow. So it's not geographically all in one place. How did you manage that? Because it's difficult as a clinic owner to be everywhere. How do you go about that?
It's a big question, actually. When we set up the first clinic, it skyrocketed really. It went really fast. And what I found was we were pulling a lot of patients in from the Lincolnshire area, which was a different geographical area to us.
Mm-hmm.
The clinic that we had was full. So we were tied in for another couple of years with the contract. We couldn't really grow anymore. And I'll be honest, I'm quite impatient, Priya, to be honest. So I thought, right, how can we scale this up now? Because I can't get out the contract I'm in. So I thought, you know what, let's move the clinic let's open another clinic in a territory in which 40% of these patients are traveling from, which was Lincoln. And I've worked with quite a lot of mentors, and I always remember the one mentor that I still work with, actually. He said to me, he said, Joe, if you're going to open 2 clinics, you might as well open 10, because the systems and the processes that you've got to build for 2 is the same for 10. The biggest jump you're going to make is going from 1 to 2. So we set about setting up the systems, the processes, um, and then once we moved into that second geographical territory and we cracked the systems, I realized very quickly then that I could pretty much pick a geographical territory, open a clinic, and the same thing would happen, which was then why we opened the third one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So opening 2 clinics, not in the same geographical area, but anywhere in the country would still be the same. Is that what your mentor
Yeah,
said?
yes. I mean, I've proved it now in 3 different geographical territories, and we do have patients that license. Sorry, we do have physios that license our software now, and they're enjoying the same success. So there's a clinic in Norwich that are doing it. There's one in Nottingham, and we basically instill our systems and our processes, and it's working exactly the same for them as it is for us.
So you are completely cash based.
Yes.
What made you think that let me do this? Because not many people do that. They go with insurance companies and that's where they get the most money, especially in private. So what made you think that let me take this bold step?
Well, when I was working in football, my vision when I left was to create a physiotherapy clinic that mirrored a Premier League medical department or a professional sporting environment. And I just didn't feel, my gut feeling was telling me that this can't be done on insurance work. And I don't mean this disrespectfully to people that do run insurance-based clinics, but it just wasn't of interest to me. And there's a few issues that I had with the insurance model. So, um, number one is when you've got a private insurance business, you don't actually own the business. They own the business. They dictate your fees. They determine when they're paying you. They determine what referrals you get. It just didn't sit right with me. I saw it as quite a vulnerable business model, to be honest. That was the first reason. And the second reason was I wanted to scale fast, and I couldn't afford to, be waiting 30, 60, 90 days to get paid. I needed the cash straight in the bank once the session's finished so that I can move and invest in shockwaves, new machines. So from a cash flow perspective, I felt it was very unpredictable working with insurance companies. And the other thing was as well, when I started looking at the fees which they pay, they just have not kept pace with the cost of running a private clinic. I mean,
Mm,
they're miles off, where I think a private clinic needs to be charging. So that was the third thing. And then the fourth thing was I saw real challenges with recruiting and retaining staff because of all of the things that I've just said. If you can't charge a premium for your services, you're not going to be able to retain good staff because they're going to move on to people that will pay it. So for me, I made the decision quite quickly that I wasn't getting involved in that. I was going to build a strong personal brand. We were going to have a really big digital presence, and we were going to do things differently. And we were going to charge premium price for our services. We were going to scale fast, and yeah, and we're nearly at 7 figures now, and I've never looked back, to be honest with you.
whatever you shared, it was like music to my ears. How focused, and I think in the first 5 minutes, you've already said that you're quite impatient. You've already said 2 to 3 times.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you? Is it like hungry to do more? Like, I want to contribute more? Or is it like, have you turned your impatience into your strength?
I think it's definitely a strength. So I always feel that long term, you should be very, very patient with what you're trying to achieve long term or medium term.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very impatient with what you're trying to achieve short term. So if there's something short term that needs to happen, such as we need to recruit a new physio,
Mm-hmm.
very, very impatient with that. You
Yeah.
know, long-term vision is that we need 3 clinics. I'm going to be patient with it. So
Mm-hmm.
break it down into short and long-term goals. And I'm very, very impatient with the short term. And I'm quite good at getting things in the right order.
Mm.
What's the very next thing that needs to happen? And I think sometimes when you think too far ahead, you can get overwhelmed with it and you don't
Mm.
take any action. Just getting things in the right order and be really impatient with the very next thing that needs to happen. I think you can grow at an exponential pace then.
I think that impatience, what you described, is something that makes you take action.
Definitely.
You don't want to sit on things. You
Now,
don't want to plan, put it on a paper, and you wait until things are in the right order for you to take action. You literally, this is what I have to do. In next week, I'll do it.
that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
I think sometimes, you just got to keep smashing on that door until it goes.
Mm.
And then when you get through, you're on that upward trajectory again. And now you hit another obstacle. When you get there, keep smashing on that door till you break through another level. You need to do the last sort of 6 years.
Yeah, yeah. And have you realized that in this physio business, mostly physios who open their private clinics, they have some barrier. Everyone wants to open a clinic. Okay. Talk from my perspective. When I was in the first year of physiotherapy, I just thought, that's it. This is what I'm going to do. Everybody has that dream, but not everyone gets to the stage where you are.
Yeah.
So, what was that mindset that helped you change things?
It's a good question, actually. Um, I mean, I've always believed I can do whatever. I honestly believe if I wanted to have 20 clinics, I would have 20 clinics. But I don't want 20 clinics. What we've got now serves me and serves my life and serves my team. So I think you've got to believe in yourself because no one's gonna put that belief in you. You've got to believe deep down that you can achieve this. And so in terms of, I mean, it's a really difficult question to answer. I mean, I take the emotion out of it. There's no emotion involved.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of fact for me. Let's deal with the facts and what's the very next thing that needs to happen. And I think as well, having worked in an elite environment in professional football,
Mm.
you do. I think when you're involved in sport, whether it's athletics, football, rugby, I think it does rub off on you. You do have that mindset that you can go and achieve anything because you've been around it day in day out.
So, when you started off, you were employed. How long were you employed for? And what was that aha moment where you decided, that's it, I've done a lot. I think I can open my, because that has to click to you as well if you want to open something of your own.
Yeah, I won't say I had a moment where it clicked and I felt, yeah, I can open a clinic because I don't think it works like that. I think
Mm-hmm.
even now, there's things that I'm uncertain about, I'm unsure about, but I trust that I'll figure it out. And I think that's what it is. It's trusting that you'll figure it out and you don't need to have all the answers along the way. But you have got to be resourceful. You've got to go and get a good mentor, people that you can bounce ideas off. And the best advice that I would give to anybody that's in that situation now is go and find the person that's sat in the seat that you want to be in.
Mm.
If you found them, go for a drink with them, go for a meal with them, pay them for coaching because it will accelerate your development, your growth. You'll miss all the traps and you'll get to where you want to be much, much quicker. Literally, go and hunt the person down that's sat in the seat that you want to be in. And you'll be surprised actually at how many people do want to help you.
That's exactly what I do. Since I came to the UK, that's the only thing that has helped me. In 2013, so I came in 2012. In 2013 itself, I'm I wasn't good at networking. I believed I was an introvert. I'm not good at public speaking. Coming to a new country, trying their language and speaking like them, it's not that easy. I found a mentor, my first mentor in 2013. Because of her, I landed my first qualified physio role because I knew she's been here, she's been in the system. And when she said that she's somebody who can coach physios, I was like, I'm up for it. What do we have to do? I knew that she could help me. That's it. But nowadays, what I'm getting is because of lots of social media and information at our fingertips, people think it's easy to get information. So that mentor coach, it's like slightly underrated, where people don't think they have to invest to get the best.
Yeah. Yeah, but what I would say to that is, you know, I think there's two aspects here. There's the what and there's the how. And I think what you get on social media is you'll get the what. I think we all know what we need to be doing, but it's the implementation that people struggle with. And I think that's what you get from a mentor. It's the implementation. It's the
Mm,
you
yeah.
speak to physios, they'll tell you what they need to do to open a clinic. They'll know they need to post more on social media. There's loads of people with lead magnets that you can download with content planners, and I mean you can just go and copy other people's content, but how many actually go and do it? I mean, I read a stat on recently on LinkedIn that only 1% of people on LinkedIn are actually producing content. The rest are consuming. So I would say to that most people know what they need to do. It's the implementation that they struggle with, and that's where a mentor comes in.
Yeah, glad that you said that because I'm a mentor, I'm a coach for physios to get their jobs. And people think they can do it. People think they know this is where they apply for jobs. They know this is how they prepare for interviews. But then somehow they're still struggling and stuck in that loop of, job applications, feedback, interviews, job applications, feedback, interviews, round and round and round. And years go by and they don't realize that actually there is someone who's saying they can help you. And it's like losing weight. Everyone knows how to lose weight. Everyone knows, okay, you go to this gym, you read a book, you control your diet, you do this, you do that. But do you do that?
Right.
Not everyone does that. That's why they need somebody who can help them get there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've trained my whole life. I'm a physio, qualified. I've worked with elite performers, but I have personally have personal training once a week, and it's not for the what I need to be doing. It's for the implementation. It's the accountability.
Mm, you're right. How did you decide that this is how much I'm going to charge? This is my positioning. This is how much I'm worth. And okay, let's get to this point, and then I'll ask you the follow-up question about the common mistakes that physios make, which I have seen a lot of physios who undervalue themselves.
Yes.
Hence, this question is very important of how you decided.
Yeah. So the price is all determined on supply and demand tension. So
Mm,
if you've got supply and demand tension in your clinic, you can put your prices up. It's as simple as that. So the worst thing you can do is go and look at what everybody else is charging. That's the worst thing because that's race to the bottom. And so in terms of pricing, wherever you're at, if you've got supply and demand tension in your business, what I mean is you've got more people wanting to work for than you can possibly work with, it's time to put your rates up. And, what you charge is directly proportionate to the size of the problem that you fix. If somebody's just legs feel a bit heavy and they just need a bit of a massage, or there's a limit to what you could charge there because the problem that you're solving is not that big. Whereas if you're somebody that's dealing with quite complex cases and, you know, post-surgical cases, you're arranging MRIs, getting people in front of the right consultant, well, the problem that you're solving is a lot bigger. So
mm.
you charge a lot. So, I mean, that's one way of looking at it. I think the other way of looking at it is, what geographical territory do you operate in? I mean, what you charge in London, you're not going to charge in some of the areas that I charge in, pure and simply because the money's not there, and also the overheads are a lot more expensive in London. So you've got to know your numbers. You've got to know your numbers, which comes on to something we'll probably talk about today in terms of visibility. What's your running cost of your business? How much does it cost for you to run your business? How many new patients do you need a week to maintain a full diary? What's the cost of acquisition per patient? And if you're full, how much revenue does that generate for your clinic? And then it's just overheads taken off of what you're generating on a full diary, and then you just work from there.
And I think that's the common mistakes physios make. They look at what other people are charging. So, say for example, I want to open a clinic. First thing I'll do is I'll go and look at what people are doing in East Midlands.
Yeah.
And I'll think, okay, this physio is charging this much, that physio is charging that much. So let me find a sweet spot for me.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm determining my worth based on what other people are charging out there, which is not the right way to go. So that's number one mistake that physios make.
Yeah.
Yeah. Number two, numbers. As you said, not everyone thinks, especially physios, that they are good with numbers. You've got to see how you're performing, where people are coming from, where they're going. Numbers,
Looking at competitors.
looking at competitors.
And creating supply and demand tension in your diary.
Yeah.
That's the big one.
Hmm. You have been talking a lot about a mentor who helped you. At
Yes.
what stage did you find a mentor, or did you already have one before you opened your first clinic?
I've always had mentors. So I've had clinic mentors, I've had business mentors, people that can pick up the phone and, what do you think to this? What would you do in this situation? And, they all solve different problems. And, some come into your lives at different times. And I think, I don't think you will have the same mentor for your entire life, because you'll get from them what you need and then you move on. And I think since I've had the clinic, I've had three mentors. Yeah. And I will go back to some of them with certain questions, because I think they've all got their niche. But there's one that I have worked with through the entirety. And when I met him, actually, I met him as a patient. Actually, he was one of my first patients. And when I met him, it was like somebody just picked me up, lifted me off a path, and put me on another one. And he
Hmm.
phenomenal. And he's a big part of the success that I've had. Actually, is working with him very closely.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that with us. So, with regards to you, you mentioned that every coach, every mentor has a niche.
Yes.
How important is it for physios to identify their niche?
Yeah, I think it comes into the marketing of your clinic really. So, and this is one of the big mistakes that clinic owners make, is they don't know who they help. So you should be able to say within sort of 10 seconds like who your target audience is. So like ours is active people of all ages, and that means somebody middle age with a young family that walks the dog, does a 5K run. And with that, they'll bring their kids in that play rugby on a weekend, play football, and with that, their parents will come in that you know are part of the local Ramblers club. So it's active people of all ages. That's our target audience. Um, and I think the skill set that we've got really lends itself to active people.
Hmm.
I think we can solve big problems. We've got a lot of experience working with Olympic athletes, professional boxers, professional footballers. You know, our skill set really lends itself to active people. So that's our target audience. But I think finding your niche and finding who it is that you help is that's that's a really big part of setting up your clinic. And there's the three P's that one of my mentors said to me around passion, payment, and problem. So if you think of a vector diagram, the sweet spot is where all three of those cross over. So, what are you passionate about? What sort of problems, what sort of injuries do you like solving? And does it actually pay you enough money? And you've got to get in between all three. I know when I first set up the clinic, I marketed myself as a sports physio, dealing with like complex sports injuries. And it worked great at the start, because I was passionate about it. I love solving them type of problems, hamstring ruptures, ACL ruptures, meniscus tears, shoulder dislocations. It was great. I loved it. But the problem I had was, although it did pay for me, when I come to scale the business, it didn't pay for a team of 8, 9, 10 physios. The volume of people just wasn't there. And what I had to do is rebrand the business, because I realized that if we were going to market to that niche, if you like, it was great for a very, very small team, not for a team of 8, 9, 10 physios.
Yes, niche is important, but it is also important to know where you want to go. If you know where you want to go, then you can actually rebrand yourself, and it's okay to let go of whatever worked for you in the past.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think Winston Churchill had a good saying when he said to to be good, to change is to be good, to be perfect is to change often. I think that's so true. What got you to where you are won't get you to where you want to be. And I think you've constantly got to be reassessing things.
Everything you're saying, someone who was listening to us today would think, oh, Joe, he talks very well. He articulates things very well. He has already had a background in sports. So he had everything there. And that's why it was easy for him. What do you want to say to those people who would think, Joe, it's easy for you?
Yeah, I'd understand why people say that. And I have had people say that, that the reason Joe's clinic's done really well is because Joe has worked with world champion boxers and he's worked in professional football and blah, blah, blah. But what I would say to that is I treat less than 5% of the patients that come into our clinics now. And I regularly go and sit in the waiting rooms, talk to the patients, ask them how the treatment's going. And none of them know who I am. They look at me as if to say, who's this guy just sat randomly talking to me? They don't realize I'm the director of the business. So I think it maybe gives you an unfair advantage when you get going, maybe. But I also know people, great physios, amazing physios that have worked in elite sport that have, gone privately. And the business, I won't say any names, but one in particular, Premier League physio, set up a clinic and it went, out of business after 3 or 4 years. And you're talking about a clinic that had all like leading physios working in it. It's got all the bells and whistles, all the old anti-gravity treadmills, everything, and it's gone out of business. So it just proves that reputation and clinical skill doesn't grow and scale a physio clinic. Not even in the slightest.
And I think if what you're saying is right, because if Apple, the company Apple, if they stop advertising tomorrow,
Yeah.
okay, or think of any other leading, Elon Musk, let's say that he is always in media, he is always on people's minds because they want you to remember them.
Yes.
And that's the biggest mistake people make, especially those who are starting out in business. They think now it's working fine. People know me, people know what I do. That's it. I don't have to spend as much on advertising or spend anything at all on advertising.
Right. That's right. It's crazy, isn't it? It's, as soon as you're not in the media, you're soon forgotten about. You see that all the time. I mean, you see that in clinics. I mean, I can remember we have certain reactivation campaigns that we set up in our marketing software. And the reason I set that up was, patient comes in, they've got a big problem, you assess it, you scan it, whatever you need to do, you treat it, you get them back to their level of sport, they leave you a Google review. And, you assume that any problems that they get, they're just going to come straight back to you for the rest of their lives. And then, 18 months on, 2 years on, you find out they've been somewhere else. And it's simply because they've just forgot about it. And as a physio, you take things personally, don't you? Because you're really proud of your clinical skills and, I mended that, got them back. And then this person just got the outcome they want, left. And because there's a clinic 10 minutes up the road that they had an appointment, they just book in and they forget about it. So you do have to constantly be in people's faces. You do.
Having these three places, clinics, where you have real people come in every single day, you are being with them as a director, you are speaking with them, motivating your teams. How do you do that?
Yeah, so in terms of like reaching out to patients and stuff, so there's 2 stages or the first 2 stages of automation. Most never get past the first one, by the way, is just fixing leaks in the business. So people that have inquired and then the front desk not rang them, or they rang them once and never rang them back. When you look at a business, there's so many leaks in a business. And I think from speaking to clinic owners, there's about between £3,000 and £8,000 a month in leaks that can be fixed without generating any more patients. So the first bit is fix the leaks. And then the second bit is segmentation. So you've got to segment people in your database. So one of the big reasons that people will unsubscribe from an email is because they're getting an email that's just not relevant to them. If somebody is coming to your business with, a sports injury, or they're a runner and they've had ITB friction syndrome or Achilles tendinopathy, and they're getting emails about knee replacements, it's of no interest to them. They're just going to unsubscribe. Whereas if you can segment them based on their interests or the type of injury that they've had, and you can start delivering content to that runner that had ITB friction syndrome on how to prevent Achilles tendon issues when running, they're not going to unsubscribe. So I think it comes down to segmentation, and I think it comes down to delivering content that's actually of interest to them. And there's a great book that I would recommend reading if you're into marketing. It's the best book that I've ever read on marketing. It's by Marcus Sheridan, and it's called They Ask You Answer. And what the theme of the book is all about is that your content that you're delivering should just be answering questions that your patients are asking, your clients are asking you. So we will do a video on like these 3 hamstring exercises for stronger hamstrings, or this is how you load an Achilles tendinopathy, right? Patients are not interested. Patients are ringing my clinic up asking, do I need to shave my legs before my first appointment? You know, so it's getting the content to them that they're actually interested in. And the easiest way to do it is to get your front desk team just to write down the questions that people are asking on the phone. And that's your marketing content. That's your email marketing. That's your SMS marketing. That's your video marketing.
You are absolutely right. And did you start with a system since your from day one, or did you actually then slowly get all these things in your clinic?
Yeah,
How
so
did
I've had a lot, to be fair, I had a lot of systems. So I worked with just MailChimp originally, and then obviously that just didn't do anywhere near enough. And then I worked with like Keep, Infusionsoft, and a few other bits, ClickFunnels. And then in the end, I built my own. So we've got our own system now, which we license called Physio Leads. So it's an all-in-one plug-and-play marketing system. And the reason that I built it was I know what needed to happen in the business. I know how the business needed to run. Everything from recruitment to patient welcome sequences to patient lead nurture sequences to reactivation to segmentation. I knew what it needed to do and nothing did it all. So I built it myself. So the answer to your question is I have worked with systems from the start. That's obviously developed and continues to develop. I mean, every other week we're creating a new automation. But we've now got to the point where we've got our own. And it's great now because we built it with the team will come to us now and say, there's a problem here, Joe, or there's a friction here, or this is taking too much time. And we'll sit down and go, right, how do we offload that? And I'll give you an example. So we have one of my front desk girls, she's responsible for the reputation of the business. So one of the things that she'll do is she'll request Google reviews. And what we worked out was that the optimum time to send somebody a review link is session 5, and the optimum time of day to send it is after 5:30. And then there was a few things that she needed to put in the message, like put the physio's name in the message and get the right Google review link for the location that she's at. So obviously a lot of moving parts there. But when she started asking people for reviews around those parameters, our reviews went from 10 a month to 40 a month. So it times by 4, well, 4 times more reviews. So she come to me and she said, Joe, these reviews are taking too much time. I said, how much time are you spending a week on that? She said, between 6 and 8 hours. I thought, wow, it's like a full day of work. So we went into Physio Leads. She told me how she does it. We triggered a campaign off at session 5. We filtered the message to include the treating practitioner's name and the location, so they got the right Google review link. And now we put the same amount of reviews on, and it takes 0 minutes a week. And that's what I talk about building the systems and the processes. You get through the glass, you solve the problem, and it's obviously very time consuming. Once you've got it cracked, now what you need to do is systemize. So I have a program called Clinic Builder, which is 4 stages to it. First is visibility, which we spoke about, having visibility on your numbers. The second is optimize. So that would be working out what works. That would be Laura saying, send it at session 5, include this in the message, blah, blah, blah. That's optimize. And then the next bit is how can we get rid of that and free her time up? That's systemize. And then once you systemize, you move on to the next problem.
Excellent clarity, excellent articulation of what systems you've got. And that comes with a lot of trial and error. You've tried a few things, they worked, perfect, run with it. They didn't work, redundant. You move on to something else and you try something else. And then it has led to you creating your own system,
Right.
which I guess can be helpful to other physios who are looking, or is it only for your own clinic?
So we built it in mind where we can license it to other clinics. So we do now have other clinics that license our software. So the way that would look is everything that we've got in our clinics, the moment the clinic takes that license, it's all in from day one. So like our referral and reactivation campaigns, they're in, the dashboard's in, the welcome sequences are in. There's obviously just a little bit of tweaking around branding so that it doesn't come from Sharp Physio. But yeah, we've got clinics that are using it, and it's working great. And the great thing with that is as well, we're building a really good community here. So obviously we've worked a lot of this out. So to license that to other clinics and see them, you know, having the same effect for them as it does for us is great. But there's two things that are happening. Number one, we're constantly innovating and building new stuff. So the moment we build it, we drop it into the clinics that are licensing it, so they're benefiting from it. But the other thing that's really good now is we've got more clinics coming back to us and saying, "Have you thought about building this?" We're like, "Oh, it's a great idea." You see, so we're creating a really good community actually. And it's really good, and they're all cash pay clinics as well.
Perfect. So it's not about competition, it's about collaboration.
Yeah, I mean, I won't license it to anyone within a 10-mile geographical, within a 10-mile radius of one of our geographical territories, because that would just be stupid, you know. But yeah, there's no competition. It's complete collaboration.
Yeah, I think that's another mistake physios make. They think the moment you start asking another physio or a clinic owner, this is I want to do this, can you help me? And they think they will not help me fully because they don't want a competition for themselves.
Do you know what, right? That comes down to mindset, right? So there's two types of mindset. There's scarcity mindset and there's abundance mindset. And I think people that work like that, they're always operating from a scarcity mindset. And you never grow with a scarcity mindset. You know, always should try and adopt an abundance mindset. And I think as well, when you share stuff, it expands. You should always share stuff because it comes back to you. It returns itself to you. And I do, I'm a little bit into the universe, you know, and energies and things like that. And I do feel like things start to align for you when you start working like that. That's just me personally, without getting too deep into it. I feel like it returns itself to you in different ways.
I'm a strong believer of universe. I love the law of attraction, law of manifestation. I believe in it. And everything you said, I echo those thoughts. I do exactly that with the physios I coach. And that's the only thing that we practice in the community, abundant mindset. I said, you think there are no sponsorship, you think there are no jobs, there is this, leave it out of this community. When you come here, only one thing works, abundant mindset.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And I think I spend around 60 to 70% time of my coaching on building their mindset.
Yeah, yeah,
And the strategy is like what 20%. This is
yeah.
how you apply for jobs. This is how you prepare for interviews. That's it.
Getting rid of those barriers that they've got in their mind around what will work and what won't work. Instead of saying, you know, how can I make it work? You know,
Exactly.
yeah, definitely mindset all the way.
Yeah. You know what? Only asking you questions about your cash-based clinic, you've actually given a mini masterclass to all those physios out there who are listening to us. And that mini masterclass was for somebody, a physio, business owner, clinic owner, who almost had put themselves out as a physio influencer, a physio content creator. And guess what? They are busy doing that all the time. And then the focus moves and shifts from actual treating patients to focusing on the business to content creation full time. So thanks a lot for sharing everything so openly.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. And I think when you said the mindset shift part, I'm sure your mentors must have played a bigger role in that. And what experiences you get throughout your childhood and how you've grown up, even that matters a lot when it comes to mindset. It's not a one time thing.
Well, it's funny, you know, because you say that because I've always been very entrepreneurial. And I don't really know where it come from because my mum didn't work and my dad was a bin man. There's no business owners in my family. No one ever got a degree. And I spent a large part of my life trying to work out where that come from. And I was a part of like a mastermind group. I started working with a chap, and one of the first things that you had to do on his mastermind was work out your origin story. So what he explained was that something happens between the age of 10 and 13 where you get a lot of independence or you create something, you build something, you make some money. And what happens as an entrepreneur is you spend the rest of your life chasing that feeling. So people think entrepreneurs chase money. They don't. They chase a feeling. And that feeling, it stems from something that happened between the age of 10 and 13. And when he said that, it became very clear for me what that was. And you know, I was one of four boys, single parent, so I didn't have a lot of money. And I can remember I was 12, and we used to go school uniform shopping every year. me and my three brothers, and my mum never really had any money, so it's quite a stressful thing for her. And I'm at that age now where I want to wear nice trainers, Nike trainers or Adidas. And I always remember her saying to me, she said, if if you want to if you want Nike trainers, Joe, you've got to buy them yourself. And I was like, wow, I'm 12 years old. Like, how am I going to do that? And cut a long story short, I went out and got a paper round and, started making money from a paper round. And I love my paper round. I always say that the paper round was my best job in a lot of ways because I was making money, had a job, I was buying things that I wanted out of my own money. And strangely, my paper round was, we lived on a council estate, but in our village, there was a really like millionaires row, if you like, all big houses and stuff. And my paper round was down there. And I do believe that doing that paper round, going down there on my bike, looking at these houses, looking at these cars, asking myself, what do they do for a living and how did they get there? And, what did their mum and dad do? It was almost like conditioning from a young age. And yeah, I just realized once we worked out my origin story, I realized what I was chasing. I was chasing this feeling I had when I was 12 years old and bought my own pair of Nike trainers.
Your origin story does work. And that reminded me of my origin story, which is again the same age. I always say that when I was on the crossroads of being a teenager, and that time, GCSE kind of that air time, my mom said one thing to me when I said, "Mom, this is not going to work. It's too hard, and this and that." And she just said one line, which is still with me. I didn't understand it then, but now when I work on origin story, I realize that she kept saying, "For mere existence, even the tiniest pests perish and survive. What extraordinary feat have you accomplished by being born?" And from then on, I was like, anything that I say that I can't do or go in that direction, this statement comes to my mind, and I'm just like, no, that's an excuse.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant.
So there you go. That's my origin story, which I had been sharing for a long time on social media and everywhere else. It's in my book as well, Leadership Guide for Physios. It starts with my mom's quote of this is what she said to me. And at that time, it might not have made sense. What do you mean, Dria? Do I just go and do something big that no one has ever done? But now, what I'm doing, I'm chasing that feeling of am I making a difference to somebody's life?
Which is quite unique, really, because when you think about human beings don't play to win, they play to survive. Our natural instinct is just to survive. So to find someone like yourself, and every other entrepreneur that don't want to survive, they want to win, they want to create, they want to build. It's quite unique because it goes against what comes naturally to us as human beings.
Exactly. That's why humans exist. Even animals for that matter. That's the survival instinct. And over the time, we've got sucked up into various things that we see outside, and we kind of think we don't have to survive anymore because we are not going hunting anymore. And we kind of leave that
Right.
it's extinct. But now, if you look at the world and in the way we are going, I think that's exactly what we want. I also admire one more thing of yours, Joe. Communication.
Okay.
You are really good when you are communicating. And since the beginning, it's been 50 minutes already, didn't even realize. You have been giving me answers in twos or threes, or you have structured answers, one, two, three. Or when you talk, you always summarize towards the end. Did you learn this, or did it just come naturally to you? How did you build your communication skill?
So when I first started treating as a physio, the first mentor that I ever worked with, he explained to me that physio is 80% of communication and 20% clinical ability. And that resonated with me. And I used to watch him and how he used to get a grip of people in the room and control the room and the room presence. And it was all to do with his communication. So what he used to do with me was he used to set up a camera in a room, and he used to get a physio to model as a patient. And that patient could be all different types of patients. It could be a young sporty person that wants to play on the weekend when they're not fit. It could be someone that's middle-aged, they've had 3 or 4 sessions, they know better. And he used to just say to me, right, go on, off you go, do the session. He'd record it. And then he would play it back and he'd go through my communication with me and critique my body language, my voice tonality, and the words that I use. So that was the start of it, really. And then since then, it's just expanded. And I think that there's three aspects to being a great physio, and I actually think they come in this order. So number one is communication, number two is technical ability, and then three is your experience. And when you look at physios, they tend to judge themselves or judge others based on experience. But I think it's the wrong way. And let me explain what I mean. Let's say you're a physio that deals with ACL injuries, and you have got the very, very best ACL protocol. You know how to deal with them at every single stage, coordinate surgery, return them to sport, exit tests. If you can't communicate or articulate the plan to the patient that gets them on board, that gets them buzzing, that gives that patient any reason to want to come back and see you again, you will never get the opportunity to showcase your full technical ability. They'll drop out. They might have 3 or 4 sessions with you. They might drop out, in the second phase when they're in the gym. So you're not going to take them through a full treatment plan, which then brings you to the third aspect, which is the experience. What does your experience count for if patients are constantly dropping off? So when you work back from it, experience only really counts if it's good experience. People are getting great outcomes with you. Then you work back from that and go, okay, if they're going to get great outcomes with you, you need to have amazing technical ability, because you just got to be able to do your job. And then the next bit is, okay, to create an opportunity for me to showcase what I can actually do as a physio, I need to be a world-class communicator. So it's 3 stages. It's communication, it's technical ability, then it's experience. And it's in that order. We do so much communication training at our clinic. And, we have lots of different frameworks for session 1 and session 3. They're the key points when people will drop off. So yeah, it started when I left university. I had a great mentor that sort of valued it. It just resonated with me. And I've spent the last 15 years building on it, really.
So communication skill, again, another underrated thing, because they think what is required is your knowledge. And most people go behind certificates, CPD courses. I'm not against them. Yes, you need it. You reflect, you find a gap, you build on it, you get a CPD certificate, you go and learn from someone. Perfectly fine. But what most physios don't understand is your technical knowledge could be here. But if your communication is only up to here, you cannot show your technical knowledge.
Yeah.
And how do you show that knowledge is based on frameworks.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We have lots of different frameworks around session 1 and follow-up treatments. And we've actually built our own internal communication scorecard. So what that means is I can go in and watch one of my physios, score the session using our own scorecard, and I can tell you which patients will drop off and which won't. And I'm just about to prove that with AI now, by the way, with transcriptions and stuff like that. AI will run the scorecard and predict patient drop off. And we had friends up at the weekend, and funny, we were talking about this, what I'm building, and she said, Joe, it's funny, I went to a physio. So I went for the second session last week, and she told me to rebook in 2 weeks, and I just cancelled it. And I said, why did you cancel it? And she said, I don't know, I just didn't know why I was coming back. If that's not an example of communication, I don't know what is. And that's true for most physios. Most physios are great physios. They know how to assess, they know how to treat, they know when to escalate and scan. But most of them just don't know how to communicate a treatment plan. They don't know how to get people on board with what they're trying to do. And I say that from a patient outcome perspective, not from a financial perspective. I always say to my physios, you don't want patients dropping off. And you don't want them dropping off not because of a financial perspective, although that is a direct, consequence of that. It puts your clinic under enormous financial pressure. But it's more from the fact that they're not going to get the outcome that they want. So if you've got somebody that's been living with back pain for 6 years, and you can help them, and you just haven't articulated what the plan is, explained it in words that they understand, shown them what's going on, which is driving the back pain, so they can make the link in their brain and agree the plan of this is what we're going to do, and they drop off, well, they're going to spend the next 2 or 3 years with back pain, which is a crime, because you can help them. So, you owe it to yourself and your patients to develop the communication skills to be able to articulate what you can actually do for people.
Exactly. And that's where you learn this from experts who know how to communicate and which part of the brain you should be communicating to. There is a part of brain that doesn't understand your words.
That's right.
And your patients, when they're looking for answers, they only want that one problem to be solved.
That's
You
right.
speak to their limbic system, it's done.
That's right.
There is no awkward conversation. There is no awkward sales negotiation. You're not going to say, I charge this much, but for you, I'll do it for this much.
Yeah,
Be-
uncertainty.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah, creates uncertainty. One of the things I've always done, and I'm sure there'll be some physios watching this that'll disagree, but it is what it is. I have a rule called 3 and C. So you come in, we have 3 sessions, we get them a week apart, and on the third session, we just sit and see how you're getting on. And if there's 0% improvement, we're going to consider, onward investigation here and have a look at what's going on. Is this because from my experience, if you're having 3 treatments with somebody a week apart, you're treating it properly, and there's 0% improvement, like nothing's changed, you've got to be suspecting of something that's more than a physio case. Now, that won't always be the case. Some people will be 0% improved just because they've not followed advice or they've continued to run. But I'm just talking generally, 3 and C. And one of the things that we teach with patients on session 1 is to just educate them around 3 and C. So it's, Priya, I've had a look at you. This is what I think is going on. I'm confident I can help you. There's no guarantees in life. What I propose is we just put 3 sessions in the diary, a week apart, and we reassess it after 3 treatments. And if things are starting to improve, we just continue till you get the outcome that you want. And if they're not, we'll have a chat about what needs to happen next. So the patient goes away going, yeah, that all makes sense. I've got a plan, 3 sessions, we're going to review it after 3. And they feel in control because you've said to them, this is what the plan is, and they've agreed it. Some of my old patients from like 10, 15 years ago will come in the clinic now and they'll see one of my other physios, and the physios obviously operate the same way. And we had one the other week. I've probably not seen her for 10, 12 years, and she had a labral tear in the shoulder that I sorted for her. And she had a new problem, and one of my physios said, 3 and C. And she smiled, and he said, what are you smiling for? I said, I remember Joe saying that the first time I ever met him. But it works. It's safe. It's really safe, Priya. You're not going to spend, I listen to people selling people 10, 20, 30 sessions for problems, not really reassessing if they're getting any better. And I think it's negligent. I do, honestly. I think it gives the profession a really bad name. And I think it's dangerous. Until you've imaged that joint or that problem area, wherever they're in pain, until you've imaged it, you don't know what's going on. And I think it's a really safe thing to be able to say 3 and C. Let's just have 3 treatments at it. I trust my manual therapy, my rehab skills, that we can, if this is a physio case, I'll make a positive impact on that in 3. And we've had people before where, we've come in with back pain, for example, and you're looking at it, there's no red flag, and you're like, yeah, that'll solve with physio. We've treated it 3 or 4 times, nothing's changed, it's exactly the same. And then you image it and you realize they've got a really, really large disc prolapse with nerve root impingement, and it's very, very close to the spinal cord, and it's a surgical case. And that's a prime example of where 3 and C just works really, really well. And it's something that patients can visualize as well. People like visuals, don't they? They leave and they go, right, I've got my plan. If we get to session 3 and things are improving, we rewrite the plan for the next 2, 3, 4 sessions, or the plan might be that we're going to stop treatment and image it and get an image before we go any further.
And I think with this 3 and C, it also puts some onus back to the patients thinking in 3 sessions, if I don't improve, 1, I'll have to get more sessions, or 2, I'll have to see if I haven't been committed. So they commit so that you get what you want.
That's right.
So you are actually, with this framework itself, you are telling them, I'm serious about your progress. Are you?
That's correct. Yeah, yeah. And they'll come back and say, do you know what, Joe? It's not as good as it was last week, but I did go for a run on the weekend, and I know I shouldn't have done. No?
And that honesty is so important in physiotherapy because
Yeah,
people usually hide what they've done and they think it's you, it's your problem, you haven't treated me well. But if you have been communicating upfront since the beginning, they know exactly, okay, Joe and his physios will, I'll be caught out if I don't do what they're saying.
yeah. Right.
Perfect. Last question before we wrap up. Yes, you've scaled up from 1 clinic to 3 clinics. And the another fear that physios or physio clinic owners might have is recruitment and retention. So you want to scale. Number one, do you have a recruitment system? Do you trust people? And what sort of training should they get, especially if you're a private clinic owner? That's number one. Number two is retention. How do you keep them happy so they don't leave you and they see value in staying with you as opposed to going somewhere else?
Big question, that, Priya. How long you've got? When we bring physios into our business, we market their exit from the business when they start in the business. So we will bring people in and I will give them three outcomes of what they're going to get with me. So the first pathway that they're going to get with me is they're going to go on this clinical excellence pathway where they're going to get all my knowledge, not just mine. You know, my wife works here. She was an ex-Olympic diving physio, worked with Team GB, we've got other football physios. But we're going to put you on a path of clinical excellence. That's a non-negotiable. You've got to want to do that if you're going to come work here. And that'll be internal, it'll be external, it'll be getting them in with shadowing with the leading consultants that we've got contacts with. The second path is a personal branding path. So once you've got your KPIs under control and you've built a really good solid foundation of clinical skills, communication skills, what we look to do then is we look to build your personal brand. So marketing's a big thing within our clinic, video. And we have an agreement that if you'll contribute to our marketing strategies and produce long form content on the basis that we can use that for short form for social media, we as a clinic will edit and upload that video onto your own YouTube channel. So you can build your own personal brand whilst working with us. So that's the second thing. The third thing is eventually, if you wanted to become a clinic owner, as long as you've done sort of 4 or 5 years for us and you've contributed to what we've achieved, you've got the opportunity to leave with either a franchise deal or a license deal. And with that, you'll get access to all of our systems. We'll plug them all into your clinic and you'll get an arm's length relationship, mentor relationship with me to make sure that it becomes successful. And the only stipulation there is that it's not within one of our geographical territories. So when you look at what people want, physios want to be clinically excellent. They want to have a big digital, social, personal brand, or they want to be owners, or they want to do all three. Well, we can cater for all three. There's just a few rules that you've got to abide by when you come in.
Excellent.
So that's the first thing that we do. And then in terms of recruitment, we have a bit of a sweet spot. We've got a bit of an idea of like what. I mean, we've taken physios on that are older, some that are younger, some that have got a bit more experience, some that have got no experience, but they all have the same, the ones that do really, really well all have the same traits. So they're all natural communicators. So my first sort of interview, if you like, is I'll just give them a ring. I'll just have a chat to them. And what I try and do is I try and position myself as, if I'm a patient here on the phone, am I going to trust what you say? Do you come across with authority, clarity? That's the first thing. So I can just listen to what they're saying and get a picture of how they communicate. And then the other thing that we don't like as well is, and I mean, I say don't like, we don't like too much debugging. So they've got to be very, very coachable. So again, we've taken people on with loads of experience and we've taken ones on with not so much. We found the sweet spot for us is about 2 years qualified, because they've had enough experience to get the basics under control. They've likely been in an environment that's just doesn't really match up with their ambition and what they want. So they're quite frustrated. So by the time that they meet us, they're like a coiled spring, just ready to go, ready to burst. And they're like a sponge. But that doesn't mean to say we were just restricted to those type of people. We've got people of all ages and all experience levels. So in terms of the recruitment, it's a telephone call. We often ask them to send us a WhatsApp video if we're not quite sure as well. So we look at CVs. Well, there'll be these that we look at going, yeah, they're strong. Let's give them a ring, and then we'll have a listen to them on the phone. The one we then have another category of physios that we're just not quite sure about, but they might be a goer. With them, we'll reach out and ask them to send us a WhatsApp video. So a 1-minute WhatsApp video introducing themselves. That's going to tell us whether A, they're going to do what you asked them to do. B, they're confident to get on camera, which is a big part of marketing a physio clinic now. And C, what do they communicate like? And actually, one of the last physios that I recruited, he was one that we disregarded his CV, but we did ask him to give us a WhatsApp video, and it was brilliant. We watched it and I said, he's everything that we're after. Get him in for an interview, So that's the sort of start of the recruitment process. And then we have 2 face-to-face interviews. One is just a personality check, a little bit of subjective, just testing your theory and understanding a little bit. And then the third bit is a practical, and then we'll go ahead and offer the job. Now, the big bit here is once people are brought into the business, this is when the real work starts. So we have an 8-week onboarding process before they come in. We've got built out a digital onboarding training program in Physio Leads for physios. So they will watch a certain module in Physio Leads, and then we'll follow that up then with a practical just to consolidate it. And then we move through the 8-week onboarding like that, so that by the time they start, they're good to go and they're out the blocks. And then what we have then is we have a very, very strict 6 to 12 months. And by strict, what I mean is we shut the clinics every Wednesday for 3 hours, and we've done that since day one. And that's just all clinical, personal communication development. With the ones that are new starters, they'll get even more support than that. So they'll get senior physios going in and shadowing them, doing scorecards, giving them feedback on the session. But they'll also get one-to-one time with one of the directors or the clinical lead. And then we do that until they start hitting the KPIs, and then the one-to-one contact slightly reduces. And then the big thing is when they come in, and this is where a lot of clinic owners go wrong, right? Is number one, they don't know what KPIs are. Number two, they don't know what they should be for a clinic. And number three, they don't set them. And it's so dangerous because number one, from a business perspective, if you're not tracking KPIs, you don't know how your business is performing. That's the first thing. But number two is if you've got a new starter and they're not hitting their KPIs, it gives you the opportunity to go into the KPIs and go, right, okay, where are the trends, where are the patterns? It might be that this person here is getting drop-offs, but they're all dropping off after session one. But actually, if they get past session one, they have a full care plan and get the outcome they want. Right, great. So Wednesday we're doing training. Let's do some session one training with this physio. So what you start to do is you start to turn the dial with this physio based on what they actually need. So their development just goes, exponentially. And then the other side of it is that it might be that there's a certain injury they're struggling with. It might be that it's knees, that they all drop out in their knees. So you can get your clinical stuff really tight. So we monitor them with KPIs, and we do it for obviously business protection, but also for their own development. And then the final thing, and this is the bit that a lot of people overlook with KPIs, everybody wants to know they're doing a great job. And when you send your stats through to your physios and they've hit the stats, the feeling they get inside once they know they've hit what they set out to achieve, and they look back at all the training and the shadowing and the feedback they've had, and then now they're there, internally they just feel great, and that's a bit of a building block then to go from there. So once they start hitting KPIs, it's like, right, let's have a look at what the next phase of your development looks like, and we just keep moving them through like that. Did that answer your question?
It does. When you said, how long have you got, Priya? I was like, oh my God, he's got a really good set out process. That's why he's asking me the question. And it does look like that, Joe. I'm truly impressed. So whatever I would have visualized as an ideal physio clinic owner / business owner, this is like the all-in-one package. Okay. Any last advice or give one advice to physios who are looking to scale and grow in their clinics?
One piece of advice. Go and find the person that sat on the seat that you want to be in, and do whatever it takes to learn off them. If you've got to take them out for a meal, you've got to go work for them for 2, 3, 4 years, or you've got to pay them for coaching, just simply go and find the person that sat in the seat that you want to be in. And that's the only bit of advice you'll need.
Thank you so much, Joe. Thanks a lot for joining me on the podcast.